man. Burna Boy, I told them. ... Um, this was an album that I wasn't expecting, but once I found out that an album was coming, I was super, super excited. Just because Burna Boy hasn't released a bad song in years. It's been so I can't tell you the last song that Burna Boy released that I didn't enjoy. Um,
I saw you didn't
album was
enjoy Twice as Tall.
yeah, which is years.
Okay.
I know what I'm saying. Yeah, nah. The last song from Burna Boy that I didn't enjoy was on Twice and Tall, and it's been years since that came out. But every other album that he's released has been amazing. The singles he's been releasing have been amazing. And as I said earlier, the song Sitting on Top of the World was following me around everywhere I went. I was hearing it in different places. And I was like, man, this sounds like an amazing Burna Boy song. And then it was on this album, and I enjoyed it on this album. That being said, I think one of the things that clouded up the release of this album for me anyway, I don't know if you saw it, was the media run that Burna Boy went on, essentially promoting this album. One of the things that he was coming to the forefront every time he discussed this album was pretty much just him really trying to, what's the word I'm looking for here? Really trying to like push the fact that, hey, I'm releasing, this is a new genre of music. This isn't Afro beats. This is now Afrofusion. And in doing so, there are certain things he was saying which I completely disagree with. To be honest with you, I think him trying to get the Afrofusion thing off, he can get it off. I'm not angry in any way. I don't think it should have been him though. I think if anyone was going to try and get that Afrofusion thing off, I think the artist that really has claim to say what I'm doing doesn't fit into Afro beats is Amari. And there's probably a few other artists there, but Amari is really, for me, the leader of that. It doesn't fit into this category. Let's make a new category of music, because a lot of the songs on this album have the traditional Afrobeat sounds. Now there are some songs there where his sampling hits, like Jeremiah's. I can't remember the song now. I can't remember the song he samples, but it's a Jeremiah song, and he does that a lot. He did that last year with Tony Braxton. He wasn't man enough for me. But I don't know necessarily if I would go as far as saying, yeah, this can't be branded as Afrobeats. But to put all of that to the side, what were my thoughts on this album? I am a massive fan of this album. I think, sonically speaking, this might be his best sounding album, beginning to end. There's nothing on this album that at any point, there's no low points on this album. It starts off good, it ends good, and all of the middle is really, really good. Sonically speaking. That being said, and to unput this to the side for a second, part of his media run when he was talking about Afrobeats and why he no longer considers his music to be able to fit into that Afrobeats category, and why it now has to be put under the category of Afrofusion, was him saying that the category of Afrobeats lacks substance. And my issue is, as someone who doesn't speak Yoruba, by the way, so maybe there were things that went over my head because I don't necessarily understand the language. I wasn't picking up on a lot of substance throughout this album. Here and there was some messaging, for sure. But for the most part, this wasn't an album where I was like, he's getting super deep. Like, he's really, really talking here. Like, a lot of this album was the typical, man, this is elite level vibes. The sun is out. Burna Boy is playing, and I'm just enjoying myself. Which is fine, because that's what I want. That's all I want. If you can give me messaging on top of that, I'll take it. But he made such a big point that it was like, if you have to come on this album and you have to be talking. The same way you were talking to African Giant is how I now expect you to get here and be talking. And I just wasn't getting that from this album. So it almost made it was almost disappointing, if not for the fact that the vibes were immaculate beginning to end, and there are no bad songs on this album. But you've now raised the stakes unnecessarily for yourself to where I'm like, oh, okay, it's talking about substance. He must be talking about stuff, and he just isn't. He just isn't for the most part of this album. So, but yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
Does your version of the album have Taliban's too as a bonus track?
Yeah.
Okay, remove that because that's a bonus. So when I say, so you said the album starts off great, ends great, and the middle's great, or I think you might say the lead. I don't know which one of your adjectives you use this time. The album starts off fine, the middle's fine, it ends stupidly. Here's the thing with Burna Boy. With all due respect to Burna Boy, because if this podcast was to ever get to that level, I'd love to one day sit down with Burna Boy and have an interview because he's done so much great work that I want to appreciate it. Here's the thing with Burna Boy. Burna Boy is not someone who I listen to in terms of when they speak. I'll listen to your music every single day of the week, but you start talking, I'm not trying to listen to you because I don't really have much. There's not really much that you're going to tell me that I care about. So I saw that he was going on that media run that you were talking about. I was seeing some of the headlines. I was like, I don't really care. You're not really someone who your opinions matter to me. But a lot of what he said was just very stupid and counterintuitive. Because if you say that Afrobeats doesn't have substance, then what is the entirety of African Giant?
That's my point. My point exactly.
You don't need to. We'll just let that breathe. Like if he can answer that question, then you can tell me. Which is fine. And then the reason I say this album ends stupidly is because why he would do that on the track he has J. Cole, where he's telling everyone, you need to give me thanks for all the shit that I've done. What does that mean? What does that mean? Who is it that you're saying that to? And when you then couple that with some of the things he was saying in those interviews prior to the album, where he's essentially just disrespected Nigeria and Nigerians in some of those points. It was like, bro, like what? Don't ever think you're too big. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't ever think you're too big. And that's the point you're getting across, especially when you do that on a track with J. Cole. Because no, J. Cole didn't say you're Tupac reincarnated. Doesn't even sound like something J. Cole would say. Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, I saw Burna Boy, he's Tupac. No, if it's Diddy, if it was a Diddy said that, yeah, I can see Diddy saying that. Cole didn't say that. But anyway, that's a different thing. The album's fine. I think I listened to this album in Portugal in the sun. On one of the days that I said to my niggas, yo, y'all go do you. I need some alone time, me, myself, and I, because that's really all I've got in the end. That's what I found out. There ain't no need to cry. I took a vow that from now on, I'm going to be my own best friend. So when I had my me, myself, and I day, this album just came out. So I said, let me go listen to it. As I was roaming the streets of Porto. So I'm in the sun, beaches, vibing. And I just thought to myself, the album sounds fine. Like it didn't, like that's the perfect ideal setting I think you would want for an album like this. And it didn't move me in any way, shape, or form like previous Burna Boy albums have. There are some really high points. I think City Boys is a really good song. I think Sitting on Top of Art is a really good song. I think Cheat on Me featuring Dave. I think Dave's verse is really good. It's interesting when I saw that Gizza and the RZA were featured on this album. Wu-Tang is definitely for the kids and Wu-Tang is forever. Wouldn't necessarily say I needed them on a Burna Boy album, but that's my personal preference. But I like the fact that I'm sat here having listened to this album multiple times, knowing that we were going to review this project. I'm looking at the track list as we speak right now. Taliban's is in a whole nother stratosphere, by the way. I don't even count this as part of the album, but that is a stratospheric song.
Yeah, massive.
But the fact that I'm looking at this album, genuinely, I can't tell you what the rest of these songs sound like. As I'm looking at the track list, and I've listened to this album multiple times, I cannot tell you. I'm sure they sound good because I know there was no point where I thought to myself, "This is bad. I don't want to hear this, or I want to skip the song." So I know they sound fine, but I'm very much like genuinely can't tell you, could not tell you. And when I compare that to other Afrobeats albums, Afrofusion, whatever stupidness he wants to talk about, in the past few years that have even come out, like. If I was to pull up Mr. Money with the Vibe track list right now, I could tell you what every single song sounds like. If I was to pull up, what was even the name of his last album now? I'm even forgetting.
Love the Mini.
Love the Mini. I can look at pretty much every single song and tell you, I know exactly what this song sounds like. With Amare's album earlier this year, I can tell you what pretty much exactly every single song sounds like. Even with Asake's album that came out earlier this year, which I wasn't even that big of a fan of, bar 2 or 3 songs, I can tell you what most of those songs sound like. This one, not so much. Not so much. So it was fine, but not necessarily. I'm not as high as you seemingly are.
Fair. Yeah, no, I can't lie. This is one of those, man. For me, is one of those albums that is probably the easiest to listen to album that's released this year so far for me. In terms of I can turn it on anywhere, anytime, and I know that I'm just gonna enjoy it, man. It's Burna Boy, man. Like I think for me, it's the upgraded version of Love the Mini from last year. Where Love the Mini, I love that you know how much I love that album. I came in and said, man, this album's amazing. But if I had any criticism of that album, it would be that at the end it slowed down massively. Like there's a point where it's high, like it's super high, and then it starts ramping down slowly, and then it never reaches those high points again for me on that album. Even though the high points are enough for me to say, yo, that's one of the best albums of last year. But this album for me, it starts off like somewhat high, it gets higher, and it ends probably on its highest point. Even if we're taking Taliban out, what's it called? If I'm lying for one, probably should have been the outro, just because it has the outro vibe, and it would have been the best outro this year, in my opinion, if that had been the outro. But I'm not mad at Thanks either. I get what you're saying though. It's not lost on me what you said. Like you've raised a good point in terms of we didn't need it, but I don't know. I get a lot of enjoyment from that song. Sonically is amazing, and I'm just not mad at it. I'm not mad at it in any way, man. It ends what is a great album for me anyway. And then obviously, as someone who has a bonus, when we do get into Taliban, all you've done is add to my enjoyment of what was already a very enjoyable time, man. So yeah, I love this album, man. I love it. Fair. Should we go to the rankings?
I mean, we've done it for the other two. Why not?
Why not, man? All right, I'm gonna repeat it again for the people over on YouTube. The Two Stubborn Nigerian album rankings go as such. I hate that I ever listened to this. Won't be listened to again. Whole lot of mid. Might stay in rotation for about a week. Pretty damn good. Serious project. And then either me and or Paul can give the album our Two Stubborn Nigerian stamp of approval. In the case that we both give it our Two Stubborn Nigerian stamp of approval, the album will become Two Stubborn Nigerians approved. Paul, what are you giving this album?
Mid.
Fair. You elaborating on that or just straight mid? Fair. For this one, I'm going serious project, man. It's one of those I did see a world where I came in and gave it my stamp of approval, to be honest. The only thing stopping me from giving it my stamp of approval probably is the media circus that was surrounding it and the thoughts that media circus ended up putting in my head. But if I was ranking this without that media circus, I probably would have come in and given it a stamp of approval. This is a great album. It's a great album in my opinion. I love it. I've enjoyed every single second it's been out. And I can't see a world where I stop enjoying that, man. It's an album that I can picture myself enjoying until next year. So yeah, I'm going very serious project. That is our review of Burna Boy. I Told Them. Out of curiosity, do you have songs that you're taking away from this outside of the ones that you mentioned, or is it just those ones you mentioned and those other ones really don't live?
Just those ones I mentioned.
Fair.